when Jim Morrison, the legendary frontman of The Doors, was found dead in his Paris apartment on July 3rd, 1971. The world was shocked. He was only 27, a man whose music, poetry, and charisma had already shaped the history of rock and roll. Morrison's life had always been marked by intensity, rebellion, and mystery, and his death only added to his enigmatic legend. At 5:45 in the morning, emergency vehicles arrived at 17 Rue Boutrielis, a quiet street in the Marais district of Paris. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as uniformed officers ascended the building's stairs, entering the top-floor apartment where Morrison had been living with his partner, Pamela Courson. The official report recorded a simple medical incident, noting heart failure as a cause of death, yet there was no autopsy performed, and the process was unusually quick. The apartment, which should have been a chaotic scene after a sudden death, was described as unnaturally clean, sterile almost, with surfaces so spotless that investigators remarked on it repeatedly. A bronze bust of Morrison's face sat beside the bathtub, its craftsmanship so precise that officers who saw it noted it in their statements, yet it vanished from the inventory records, never officially documented. From the start, Morrison's death combined mystery and unanswered questions. Rumors circulated immediately, fueled by the lack of a thorough investigation and the quick closure of official files. Some said Morrison had faked his death, while others speculated that American representatives and Paris authorities conspired to prevent scandal. Whether true or not, these rumors set the stage for decades of intrigue, and the apartment itself became a silent witness to a story that no one could fully explain. For fans and historians alike, the question remained, what secrets had Morrison taken to his grave, and did anything survive the 50 years that followed his death? 50 years later, when the same apartment underwent renovations, what investigators found went far beyond what anyone could have imagined. In April 2025, during a structural renovation to repair moisture-damaged floors, workers uncovered a metallic surface beneath the subfloor near the bathroom. It was a small, heavily corroded trunk, sealed and untouched for decades. When preservation experts carefully opened it under controlled conditions, they discovered an extraordinary collection of artifacts, including photographic negatives, handwritten notes, and a bronze sculpture wrapped in decayed linen. The initials JM were etched into the lid of the trunk, confirming that it belonged to Morrison. The photograph showed Morrison in intimate moments inside the apartment, sitting by the window with a notebook, writing lines of poetry, or reclining in the oversized Roman-style bathtub weeks before his death. Handwritten pages contained verses, prose, and sketches consistent with Morrison's known handwriting and musical style. Chemical testing of the ink confirmed that it was contemporary with the 1970 to 1971 period, establishing authenticity. But perhaps the most extraordinary discovery was a bronze bust, long believed to have disappeared after Morrison's death. The features were identical to Morrison's, and a date engraved on its base read July 2nd, 1971, the night before he died. This contradicted the timeline of the bust, believed to have been cast years later by fans or sculptors for memorial purposes. Experts immediately divided, debating how the sculpture could exist decades before it was officially commissioned. The discovery seemed deliberate. It was hidden beneath the apartment floor for over 50 years, untouched and unrecorded. This trunk, its contents, and the vanished sculpture challenged everything previously known about Morrison's final days, suggesting that he may have created or concealed these items intentionally, leaving behind a trail of mysteries that no historian or fan had anticipated. Adding to the intrigue were the writings of Pamela Courson, Morrison's partner, who was the only person present during his final hours. In 1974, Courson died under tragic circumstances, an apparent overdose in Los Angeles. When her storage unit was opened years later, personal letters and a small diary from her time in Paris were found. Among the entries was a note dated June 29, 1971, in which she referenced a statue or bust that Morrison believed would protect him if anything happened in Paris. The entries described Morrison pacing the apartment at night, hearing the walls hum, and speaking to unseen presences, documenting what appeared to be heightened perception or obsession with the physical and spiritual environment. Whether poetic metaphor or literal observation, these notes align with the discoveries found in the trunk decades later. Morrison's obsession with preservation, continuity, and immortality through art seemed to permeate every object in his apartment. The bronze bust, the notebook, and the photographs were not merely personal possessions. They represented his intent to create lasting artifacts that would endure long after his death. Combined with the audio recording later recovered from the apartment, which captured Morrison's voice and environmental resonance in the tiled bathroom, these items transformed from relics into evidence of a deliberate artistic and existential experiment. Each discovery reinforced a pattern. Morrison had been attempting to preserve himself, physically and symbolically, within his environment, ensuring that part of him would continue to exist beyond mortality. This complex interplay of art, sound, and permanence reflected a man deeply fascinated with his own legacy, leaving modern researchers, forensic experts, and fans to wonder about the intersection of life, death, and creativity in Morrison's final days. The apartment itself, at 17 Rue Butriellis, had a history long before Morrison moved in, yet it became forever linked to his presence in his final months. Measuring only 60 square meters, it consisted of a small bedroom, a narrow sitting area, and the infamous bathroom overlooking a quiet Parisian courtyard. Built in the late 1800s, the building had the slightly uneven floors and compact layout typical of the Marais district, carrying with it echoes of previous residents' lives. Morrison had rented the apartment in March 1971 with Pamela Corson, seeking distance from the pressures of Los Angeles, Hollywood, and fame. To him, Paris represented both anonymity and creative sanctuary, yet neighbors later reported unusual occurrences, including lights flickering in empty rooms, footsteps after midnight, and faint sounds of running water when the apartment was unoccupied. Morrison had remodeled the bathroom weeks before his death, commissioning an oversized Roman-style bathtub large enough for full reclining, which some historians argue reflects not just comfort but ritualistic intent. Following his death, the apartment continued to evoke unease. Tenants who lived there for short periods reported erratic electrical failures, cold drafts that defied explanation, and in some cases, an inexplicable residual presence, a quiet density in the air that seemed to linger long after people left. In 1982, a tenant filed a complaint about the bathroom light turning on nightly at 3 a.m., even though the wiring had been disconnected. Maintenance workers investigated, but found no technical reason for these occurrences. Over decades, the building earned the nickname La Maison du Silence, or the House of Silence. Real estate agents avoided mentioning its connection to Morrison in official listings, yet its reputation spread, attracting curious fans and researchers. For those who had lived or worked in the apartment, there was a recurring sense that Morrison's creative energy had left a mark on the physical space. The apartment itself, with its unusual construction and acoustic properties, became a silent participant in Morrison's final act of artistic and symbolic creation, a witness to the experiments he undertook to preserve himself within the environment. The discovery of the hidden trunk in 2025 added an entirely new dimension to Morrison's story, transforming speculation into tangible evidence. When preservation experts opened it, they found items that seemed almost impossibly well-preserved given the passage of time. Photographic negatives, handwritten notebooks, and the long-lost bronze bust. The photographs capture Morrison engaged in everyday activities within the apartment. Yet each image carried an unusual intensity. In one, he is shown seated by the window, pen in hand, writing observations about the city and his own thoughts. In another, he reclines in the bathtub weeks before his death, gazing contemplatively into the distance. These images were never made public, and their sudden emergence created excitement in both academic and fan circles. Handwritten pages included drafts of poetry and prose, sketches of the apartment, and notes that revealed Morrison's obsession with sound, vibration, and the preservation of memory. He described the apartment as a living space, one that seemed to hum and breathe around him, recording subtle energies and environmental resonance. Among the most startling items was the bronze bust itself, identical in form to one later placed at his grave, but dated July 2, 1971, the night before his death. Metallurgical testing confirmed that the alloy composition matched early 1970s Parisian bronze, showing that it could not have been a later copy. Embedded within the bronze were traces of carbonized ash and microscopic elements matching cremated remains, suggesting a fusion of human material with the sculpture. This discovery challenged conventional timelines, implying either premeditated creation by Morrison or deliberate concealment by someone intimately connected with him. Experts debated whether the bronze bust was an artistic talisman, a memorial, or a deliberate act to preserve Morrison in physical form. Whatever the interpretation, the trunk's contents were more than curiosities. They were evidence of a carefully constructed system of continuity, designed to bridge his life, death, and artistic legacy. For researchers, historians, and fans, the artifact provided an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of a man whose genius was inseparable from his fascination with immortality, sound, and symbolism. Pamela Corson's writings further deepened the mystery surrounding Morrison's final days. Her diary entries, discovered years after her death in a Los Angeles storage unit, offered glimpses into Morrison's unusual behavior and mindset during his final months in Paris. In one entry from June 29, 1971, she referenced a statue Morrison believed would protect him from harm while in the city. Other passages described his increasing agitation, sleepless nights, pacing, and conversations directed at the walls, suggesting heightened perception or obsession with the apartment as a living space. While some of these descriptions could be interpreted as poetic exaggeration, the timing and content aligned closely with the physical evidence uncovered decades later, including the bronze bust, photographs, and the notebook. Corson's writings also suggested Morrison saw the objects in his apartment not merely as decorative items, but as tools for continuity, possibly ritualistic in nature. The notion that he attempted to merge his physical presence with the environment reflects his long-standing fascination with immortality, the preservation of creative work, and symbolic transformation. Researchers who analyzed a combination of artifacts from the trunk concluded that Morrison's final months were not marked by withdrawal from life, but by deliberate engagement in experimental processes designed to preserve his essence. The recordings found among these items, including an audio reel capturing his voice and ambient sound in the bathroom, confirmed that he had considered sound as a medium capable of retaining memory and continuity. Collectively, these findings painted a picture of a man constructing a framework in which his presence, artistry, and ideas will persist beyond death, leaving future generations not just music, but tangible, multi-sensory legacy. The mystery of the trunk and its contents revealed that Morrison's Paris apartment had been more than a residence. It had been an experimental laboratory for immortal creativity. The forensic examinations conducted on the bronze bust and other items recovered from Morrison's Paris apartment revealed a complexity that both fascinated and perplexed experts. Metallurgical analysis confirmed that the alloy of the bronze matched that of the memorial bust placed at his grave, yet the recovered bust predated the official grave version by nearly a decade. Embedded within the bronze were microscopic inclusions of ash and elements consistent with cremated human remains, raising the extraordinary possibility that Morrison's own material had been incorporated into the sculpture. Forensic experts confirmed that there were no signs of tampering, recasting, or modern interference, suggesting that the fusion had occurred at the time of the original casting. These findings contradicted conventional timelines and posed difficult questions about intent, authorship, and purpose. Was the bust meant as an artistic or spiritual talisman, a symbolic protector, or simply a preservation of Morrison himself in physical form? The accompanying notebooks, which documented Morrison's observations of sound, vibration, and architectural resonance within the apartment, suggested that he had conceived a broader system. Morrison believed that physical spaces, objects, and sound could carry traces of human identity and consciousness. By embedding himself into the apartment and its artifacts, he may have been experimenting with continuity beyond death, exploring ways for memory, identity, and artistic presence to outlive the physical body. The audio tape recovered from the apartment reinforced this theory, capturing his voice in the tiled bathroom with resonances and harmonics that matched the exact dimensions of the room. The tape included high-frequency pulses beyond human hearing, suggesting experimentation with sound as a carrier of information or presence. These combined findings indicated that Morrison's final act was not merely personal or secretive. It was a deliberate and complex exploration of permanence, blending art, material science, acoustics, and spirituality in ways that continued to defy easy explanation. Even decades after his death, the artifacts forced scholars and fans alike to reconsider the boundaries between mortality, legacy, and creation, challenging the simplistic narrative of a sudden, unremarkable passing. The timeline surrounding the memorial bust and its stolen replica added another layer of mystery to Morrison's posthumous narrative. The bust that had been placed at his grave in the early 1980s, created by Croatian sculptor Malade Nkilan, was widely regarded as the only representation of Morrison in bronze. Yet metallurgical dating of the recovered bust placed its creation between 1970 and 1972, nearly 10 years earlier, suggesting that either McEwen's sculpture had been copied from pre-existing mold or that Morrison had commissioned or arranged for the earlier casting himself. When shown images of the recovered bust, McEwen reportedly stated, "I made only one," confirming that he had no knowledge of a pre-existing version. This discrepancy implied that the recovered bust, hidden beneath the apartment floor for decades, could have been Morrison's personal creation or a deliberately concealed artifact from the moment of his death. Its disappearance in 1988, after being stolen from the grave, and its subsequent rediscovery in 2025, added another layer of complexity, suggesting intentional concealment by someone within Morrison's circle or a mysterious chain of events that preserved the object through decades of uncertainty. For researchers, this pattern of appearance, disappearance, and reappearance suggested deliberate design rather than coincidence. It raised questions about Morrison's intentions. Had he foreseen that the object would outlive him, eventually revealing a narrative beyond the control of any individual? Combined with Courson's writings, the photographic negatives, and the notebooks, the bust's timeline highlighted the degree to which Morrison's Paris apartment was both a laboratory and a vessel for continuity. It was a controlled environment in which he explored, documented, and possibly encoded elements of his identity, ensuring that aspect of his life and work would persist long after he had left the world. The philosophical and symbolic implications of these discoveries continue to captivate both experts and enthusiasts. Morrison's writing, combined with the artifacts, suggests that he saw objects, architecture, and sound as mediums capable of preserving essence and memory. He frequently referenced classical mythology, alchemy, and ritual transformation in his songs and poetry, and these references appear to have informed his final months in Paris. The notebooks describe heightened perception of the apartment's environment, the hum of walls, and resonance that could be felt and recorded. The bronze busts and photographs suggest deliberate creation intended to preserve continuity, while the audio tape captures acoustic traces that reflect both his physical presence and his experimental intent. Scholars studying these materials conclude that Morrison was attempting to merge life, art, and legacy into a unified system, one that would outlast his physical body. Unlike ordinary memorials or personal possessions, the recovered artifacts demonstrate active engagement with the concept of permanence. Morrison's obsession with continuity is reflected not just in his poetry or music, but in the material fabric of the apartment, the objects he left behind, and even the unseen energy that residents have reported over decades. Acoustic anomalies, unexplained electrical activity, and subtle environmental effects described by tenants point to a physical imprint left intentionally, or perhaps as a byproduct of Morrison's creative experiments. In this way, Morrison's Paris apartment can be seen as both laboratory and shrine, a space in which his ideas about identity, memory, and creation were tested and preserved. Forensic and cultural historians now treat the findings as a triad of linked artifacts: the bust, the notebooks, and the audio tape, each authentic, each measurable, yet all presenting contradictions that resist closure and challenge conventional understanding of death, preservation, and artistic intent. The acoustic properties of Morrison's Paris apartment revealed a dimension of his experiment that went far beyond the visual or material artifacts. Audio engineers who examined the reel labeled July rehearsals confirmed that the recording had been made in the apartment itself, most likely in the bathroom where Morrison spent his final